2 minutes after 7. Any observers to this are to remain mute, and they can just observe. They can't talk in this meeting. They'll get the chance to talk at the next hearing, which I assume will be at the end of next month, or end of this month, basically, which is what, the 24th or something?
24th, yep.
Yeah. So more than likely, this will be on the agenda. So any comments you have that relate to what's going on in here should be held until then. We will not converse with anybody offline except with the people that we're dealing with at this moment, which are the developer and the architect, basically. Amy, you want to read the legal notice?
Sure. Bear with me. There we go. Oh, hold on.
I should note while Amy's looking that up, there'll be no votes, no voting. All voting happens within the Board of Appeals, basically. Nothing here this is just a study committee or subcommittee of the zoning board to help sort of direct the direction of this project based on comments made at the last full meeting on this project. So as has been done in the past, basically we go through and look at this and make suggestions, look at how things are developing. Everybody sort of knows that there is concern on the part of the board as to the size of this project, parking issues and the like. And the appearance of it and how it scales to the neighborhood at the same time. So that's where our focus is going to be. There could be a number of these meetings over time, but at this point, this will be the first public meeting with this board, basically representing both myself and Amy. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay. Consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation to the greatest extent possible. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and or listen to the meeting in real time. Persons who wish to do so are invited to click on the following link. If you do not have a camera or microphone on your computer, you may use the following dial-in number: 1-301-715-8592, meeting ID 921-7150, 9375, passcode 717876. Please use dial-in or computer and not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be audio and video recorded. 1, call to order and roll call. 2, 21-37, Crescent Commons Development LLC, 44, 46, and 48 Crescent Street Zoning Board Subcommittee will meet with the project architect to discuss architecture and reducing massing. So do you want to just do a roll call?
Yep, just you and I.
Yep, so Jim.
Jim McBain.
And Amy Wall. Okay.
Representing the Board of Appeals on this subcommittee. So Peter, let's start with you, and why don't you bring up where you're at so we can see it.
Can I bring that up, Peter?
I'm sorry, I'm muted. Rick is going to bring it up.
I think Peter wanted me to share my screen. Can you give me the ability?
I will try.
It should be set up that everybody can share, right? Or is it not?
No, it says host disabled participant share screen sharing.
Okay.
I think all you have to do is make me a host.
I had trouble getting in here, so let's see if I can. You getting it at all?
Let's see. Nope, still disabled. If you click on my name at the end, I just changed my status to host. I think it works.
Yeah, I was having difficulty getting toast to begin with. Not even sure I got. Yeah.
If you go to the green share button,
Yeah.
arrow up, and then it will give you some choices, like to let other people share or.
No, it's only It's actually only giving me, host disabled participant sharing.
Yeah, you want to get out of it,
Uncheck that, right?
uncheck it.
Yeah, see if you can enable it.
Host disabled participant sharing. You get anything out of this?
Nope.
If not, Jim, you have from the email that I sent you, you have the drawings there.
Yeah, maybe, although I may be recognized as only a participant as well.
So I'll have the same, guys, I guess I'm gonna have the same problem if I try and share.
See if you can. Press the green button.
No.
Jim, is it a radio button that you can click on and off?
Now, see, the problem was when I went in, I couldn't find the place to put the host number in. So I'm wondering if I go back out and come back in, will that allow me?
If you do that, you're gonna shut off the whole meeting. Don't do that.
Shoot.
Do you want to give me, you
I
want to text me the number and I can try it?
No, I can't. Oh, well, yeah, I'll text it to you.
All right,
You go off and come back in.
all right.
Hey, Jim, do you see a security bar on the bottom of your screen?
No, I look for that too.
Nothing?
Nothing, no. It's just that when I went in and looked for the little buttons on the side of it, it wouldn't let me do anything with them. And I didn't even get up.
On your share screen, on that green button, do you have a tiny arrow next to it?
I got to reopen this thing somehow.
On that green share button, see if you have a little arrow to the right of it.
Let me get Amy this thing first.
Okay.
On its way, Amy.
When you go to that green share button, is there a little green arrow to the right of it? No?
Share button is just points upwards.
There's no little green arrow to the right of it?
No.
Okay, yeah, you must have not claimed host. Probably somebody needs to claim host too. So maybe
Well,
Amy,
Amy can come in.
Yeah.
She'll claim it. Sorry for this.
it's all right. Not your fault.
It's not letting me get in as a host.
Really? Having the same problem I had.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Can hear you. Can't.
Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can get How about that? Hey, there I am.
Here you are. You're on.
I'm on. Jeez.
Yeah, just mute yourself out.
Want me to mute myself?
We're trying to get the drawings
Yeah,
up.
just mute out for now.
Okay.
Jim, I'm gonna text Dave.
Yeah, I double checked the number and that's the number for this date.
Let me see it from my phone, hold on. What's the meeting ID?
Hold on. Got to go elsewhere for that. It's 921 7150 9375.
Where's the thing though that says the host?
Amy, what you do is click, if you click on participants,
Okay,
is there something there now that says claim host at the bottom of the participant list? You go to the bottom,
no.
that's where it should be.
Jim, do you have that?
No, I don't.
Does anybody on the screen have it?
Oh, wait, claim host, here we go. All right, what's that? Oh, I have it, hold
Yeah,
on.
now you gotta enter your host key.
Yep. We'll get there, guys.
Yep, you're almost there.
Why, there's two of us here.
Right? All right, claim host. Aha, there we go. Okay. All right, so now, all right, who was trying to share, Rick?
Rick, yeah,
Rick.
click on Rick.
Well, can you share yet, Rick, or no?
Did you? Nope.
No, okay, so I'm gonna click on you. And I want to let you make host, right?
Yep, yep.
There we go.
Got it. Success?
Yes,
Success. Yes.
Thank you.
So Jim, you want me to start to talk through what the
Yeah,
plans?
Please do, yeah. Then I'll discuss some comments because I've
Yep.
taken some look at this stuff.
This is the Crescent Hill parking level plan, the main entrance to the building. I'm gonna annotate here while I'm talking. I think I can't. Nah, maybe I can't. But anyway, main entrance to the building, come in off of either Crescent Hill or Crescent Street. There are 3 units now on this level, which helps us bring the living of the building down onto the street level and hiding the parking behind. Rick, if you can go to the next plate. So here we're going up a level now. On the right-hand side are the unit counts, but this is taking what was the original building, pushing it back on the site, and also creating many breaks in the facade. So you can see there's undulation of that facade. We're adding a very large porch to the front of the building as well, to shield some of the parking level.
I think you need to back up, Ryan, you need to back up and explain where the parking is in your plan.
Go ahead. Yep. Rick, if you go back one, he's at the parking plan. Does that help?
Well, I wasn't thinking that one, but this is fine.
This is fine. So here you see, there you go. There you go. So here the units are in the front going down Crescent Hill to the right. And then all of this space behind is parking on Crescent Hill Ave and also on Crescent Street. So this is showing how this parking is entered off of Crescent Hill. So you go up Crescent Hill, you go into to the right. Parking is behind, and the units help us step down the street and keep the building lower to the ground. That's the intent. Does that help, Jim? I think it
Yeah,
does.
yeah, now go, I mean,
Okay.
let's just keep everybody oriented.
Yeah. So then when you go up, without going through the whole unit count, but these are the units laid in through the building. Some are 2, some are 1, some are 3s. We've taken kind of the original intent of the building, but adjusted them in the facade so that they undulate back and forward. And you'll see when we get to the elevations why that's important. So this we're calling floor 2, and go ahead, Rick. And then it would repeat on the next level. Rick, if you go to the next level, which is, I can't read it, but I believe it's floor 3. This is floor 4, but they repeat and they undulate in and out. If you go to the elevations now, Rick, that would be helpful. So here is the, here is the, it's actually not Crescent Hill. It's the front elevation of the building going down Crescent Street. You can see the porch, the main entry of the building. These are the units off to the right that are blocking the parking behind. There's parking below at this level as well. And then 3 levels of living above. In one spot 4, but the building is stepping down as the street goes down. If you go to the next one, please. This is the next major elevation, which is Crescent Hill. This is going up. You can see the door going into the parking at that level and 3 levels of living above. Go to the next one, Rick. Here is the rear elevation. Again, 3 levels of living, parking below. You can see the 3rd level is buried in the mansard roof to keep the height of the building down. Next one, Rick. And this is the right elevation where the parking comes in low. There's the 2 windows in the far left there are the units. Then you go into the parking garage, and there's 3 levels of living above. Will you go to those comparison slides now, Rick? You can zoom in on that one. So this shows you our building as it was originally presented, the front elevation. We've lost approximately 25 feet in height, taking the whole floor off of the building and getting it to be mostly, I guess you call it a 4-story building, not a 5-story building, and getting the unit count from 56 to 50, which is where we're at now. But hoping and helping to get the size of the building down, trying to make it read as 5, 6 small buildings attached together, and the porch helping to unite all of that. Go to the next slide, Rick. And here is the Crescent Hill side. Again, you can see quickly how the magnitude of the building has dropped by losing a story, burying the 3rd floor in the new building into the roof line, trying to get that whole building down so it comes closer in scale to the neighborhood, still maintaining the parking at this level, and trying to break it horizontally as well by undulating in and out. Sometimes the side comes forward a couple of feet, then it retreats back. So that's what's going on in this elevation. And I think, Rick, now if you could kind of jump in and talk about how the parking levels work, then they'll have a full understanding of how the building is working, at least at this point.
Sure, and this stuff is kind of hot off the press here, as it just kind of came in today, but this keeps the curb cut on Crescent Hill to the upper level parking, which you would pull in here. This includes some tandem spaces in this area here for the larger units. Come through to this parking area in the back here. If we look at the lower level, you'd go down the driveway to a lower level underneath the entire building footprint to access these parking spaces. If we look at the new parking chart, with 45 less than 3 bedrooms, 1s and 2s, and 5 3-bedroom units would require a total of 78 spaces. This provides those 78 spaces.
Right, so this is in compliance as far as parking is concerned at this point.
Relative to the number of spaces.
What's that?
Relative to the number of spaces, yes.
Yeah. All right, can we go back to, I'll come back to this later, but can we go back to the front elevation for a minute? So it's nice that this steps down and certainly is not as high as it was, but I'd like to see this section here that is coming in on this level, basically. So this step, I look at this as 3 buildings, all right? I look at this as 1 building. And when this thing,
Jim, we can't see what you're pointing at.
I'm sorry, I got my arrow pushing around, assuming everybody can see it.
Jim, I think there's a button you can press on that gives you a little marker that you can write on it.
Well, we won't bother try that, will we?
Okay.
Where is it, Rick?
Wait, let's not fool around with anything that's working. So on the right side, on the far right, you've got that little turret place basically where the roof is.
Right here.
Yeah, and then the next set of roof steps up the whole floor. So I see that as basically in line with the turret piece, basically. So that shouldn't be there. So it really does basically step down, not just a little bit, but half the building worth basically in that. Now that may mean losing some units, but I don't care because this thing is really extraordinarily large on the site and is not, it's more respectful than it has been with the previous design, but we want to make sure it is respectful to every building and place that's on there. And there is this sort of character on the street, basically on some of the older buildings as well. So it's not like this character doesn't exist in the area. The other thing is that can we go to the side, I guess, the right side of this building? Well, that's okay. So
Getting there.
keep on rotating.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, so the back building should really be 1 floor less as well. And it would be nice if it really sat in on top where the parking is, but I'm not sure that you're going to meet your parking requirements if that happens. But the point being is that the buildings, as the hills basically rises, you end up way bigger than the houses behind. If on the other hand, if that whole building was good down and there was no parking under it, then you might get away with 3 floors basically stepping into the hillside because most of the buildings up there are 3 floors on nearby basically. But on the other hand, if it's to stay this way, I think that whole roof is going to come down. So I look at that as sort of the third component to this whole project as far as mass. So breaking it down basically in appearance, but also breaking the mass down so it steps down the hill or steps up the hill, whatever direction you're going on this thing would make it better. But without seeing that image, basically, I'm not sure, how that all comes together. But just looking at the contour of the land, it would make more sense if this was several different heights, basically, within the floor heights that are in the building, but I think you could do that. Now, you may end up losing some units, which means you'll end up with additional parking in this thing. But it really is much better on the site and doesn't look as massive. I think there's, further studies basically will come up the rate to materials based on the building and how to break this down. But until we basically solve the height and the issue of the mass basically in breaking it into components, we're not going to get very far with the board basically on the concept of this design. And it is still a concept at this point. And so those are where I'm coming from. I don't know, the other thing is you can see right in the foreground, the neighbor, there's a retaining wall basically, and it's probably better off shown in the landscape drawing if you can pull that up. Where that parking is, it comes out from under the higher building. No, uphill more.
This one?
Yeah, well, yeah, right along between, keep on going north. The wall starts there, goes all the way north. As far as I know, that's a retaining wall along there. It's,
That'll be a slope, Jim. I'll show
Huh?
you what it looks like. That'll be a slope. It'll look like this.
well, okay. The way,
Slope, a wall, it's still, it's still a 4-foot grade change.
yeah, and when I was looking at it, basically, I was looking at it as a wall. It was just this massive thing overhanging the neighbor's property. Although it's not overhanging his house, it's overhanging his property. I should mention while I'm talking about one other thing here, is these are old houses, and I have one myself I live in. They're stone foundations. They have a tendency basically to leak when the water table comes up, basically. And right now, you're sitting with drainage systems right next door to him. And I think that's going to cause, I know it's going to cause a problem, basically, as it infiltrates. It's going to go downhill and it's going to go through his wall. So that's got to be studied by your engineers at this point. But that's aside the point for the moment. We're talking about the mass and the character of the building. I like the fact that this has got this porch on it now and sort of breaks that sort of dead wall there. We have to look at how we do the right side because there's also a dead wall there on the first level as well. Amy, you got any comments?
I do. These are just some of my thoughts, so take with them what you will. Looking at this picture, in my mind, that whole back portion that's back there, that whole back building, I think can, maybe go away and have that whole area be a courtyard. Have some sort of amenities for the residents that live there, have some grills out there or something, a typical backyard, so it kind of fits a little bit more in with the neighborhood. Not necessarily a dog area, but I don't know if you're going to allow dogs back there, but something that, have a bocce court or something that's out there, a little outdoor, a fire pit, maybe some type of outdoor entertainment. If you can go back to the Crescent Street image for me, please.
The first slide.
Yeah. I'm glad to see that it's gone, that, you guys have taken the steps to bring it down a little bit. I think there's still obviously more work to be done. I like the mansard roof because, like Jim said, that fits more in with the neighborhood than the other one looked like it's just a giant hotel sitting there. Oh, sorry, I'll talk about this slide too while we're here. I don't know how I feel about those units in the garage. I think that's a little odd to me. I don't recall ever seeing that. I'm not saying it's never been done. Obviously, I'm sure it has. It just seems a little odd that somebody's coming in off the garage and here's their unit. And then if you can go back to the front image of on Crescent Street.
That one. Yep.
Yep. So just my thinking, another way to bring this down even more is on the right-hand side where it's the 3 levels, above the garage, taking that down to 2, that next section that's over, losing that top section. And then again, on the left-hand side, taking off that kind of big chunk, those top 2 floors that are over there, and kind of stepping it up that way. Is that making sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're just dropping it's kind of what Jim said about dropping the roof lines down on the right and the left and let the building step up towards the middle.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I think the mansard is nice. It does make the building look a lot smaller than it does. But that whole back section, I don't know, it's just too much, in my opinion. I think that if there's a way to do something, like I said, with amenities or something back there for the residents, it's going to open up the green space. It's going to be more pleasant for the residents to look at than a big building. So that's my 2 cents for right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I just gotta add to that, Amy, I hear what you're saying with, some of those changes you're talking about are just a gigantic unit count loss. We can't lose a whole back of a building, from a unit count perspective. So I just wanna, and then some of the major step downs, I mean, our goal is to come to a resolution and make it work, but I don't know what the calculation would be, Peter, you would know more than me, but we'd probably be losing, what, 15 or 20 units by doing stuff like that?
I mean, if we did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be. Yeah.
And we're recognizing that we're gonna go down in units, we're saying, but we can't, a number like that just doesn't, it's not gonna work. And I want to be upfront with that because I want to be productive here, and I don't want to start going down a path that we're just not going to get to a common spot.
That's why my comments may be not as radical in that I could see on the right here, bringing that roof down, which, yeah, you're going to lose some units. And then at the back of the building, basically bringing that building down 1 floor, basically. I don't know what that eliminates, but it doesn't eliminate the whole back end. I understand where Amy's coming from as far as having some outside space. And that is a very deep lot in there. And certainly this building is using most of it, basically. But I'm looking at more at the mass and how we might have it step into the neighborhood more than it does now, but particularly as it used to do. It just didn't have any respect for the neighborhood at all. It just was there. And so for me, it's more about lowering the roof line in 2 locations, basically. So this looks more like it's 3 different buildings, but of the same character. I don't look to make them 3 different buildings, but I do look at the massing and say, we need to basically bring this down a bit more than what's this shown. I think this is progress, absolutely. But I think there's a few more steps, as I've already noted, to make this a little bit better. So I guess Amy and I are on a little bit different page, and that's, you guys can look at that. I also would like to know if you particularly in my case, basically my comments is, what's that do to the parking count? Because there is concern about, guest parking and the like. No matter if you're proceeding basically to meet the code, there's still also basically concern on the part of the neighborhood about people parking on the street, or the fact right now that people are parking on the street. I mean, you got buildings across the street, which are apartment complexes with hardly any parking at all for them, and they're parking on the street. Then at the same time, you got the fire department that needs to run this way. They basically got 2 directions when they come to the firehouse, and this is one of those directions. So if we start parking on both sides of the street, we're going to have some problems. And for the people up the Crescent Hill area, basically, they already have a problem as they've pointed out to us. So we don't need to exacerbate the problem that already exists. So to me, it's changing that top level and the back level, getting rid of the units and looking at the traffic count and what do we gain on the traffic, I guess, is where I'm at.
Right. And maybe I am being a little, overly dismissive of some of these units. I don't know, but the fact that the fire station is right there, and that's a huge concern of mine, is that can they get in and out how they need to? Can the police get in and out as they need to? And that's a fear of the neighbors. And, you know, obviously even not the neighbors, if you have a fire at your house and the fire department can't get to you, whether you live there or not, because there's cars there and there's overflow parking. I mean, I understand that they meet the requirement, but I don't know, it's still too much for me.
Well, I mean, we respect that. We want to work it. That's what we're trying to do. You know, I can just, you know, I can tell you, you know, with a 40B development, you know, if you have a project that meets the zoning parking requirement, that's more than most of them do.
Right.
So,
No, I get it.
I'm just being honest with you. I mean, it has to be a frank discussion because,
Right.
you know, I mean, if this doesn't get, you know, if this doesn't get resolved at the board, it goes to the Housing Appeals Committee.
Right.
Appeal and, you know, read the cases coming out of there. I mean, you know, as far as parking goes, you know,
Right.
so, you know, I mean, I think, you know, we're, you know, and being honest both ways, you know, I think where we were out of the gate on this with the parking count, you know, we went to the Traffic Advisory Committee and they echoed all of the concerns that you just said, Amy. And, you know, and Matt Keeley said, you know, basically in a very nice way, you know, make the parking work because of every concern that you just said. And so that, you know, as Rick said, we're doing that with this plan. We meet the parking count. And I'm not saying we can't trim and do more. You know, I'm certainly, you know, we're not taking a hard line here, but I just don't want to create a misconception that we're going to start taking the whole back portion of the building off and floors and stories off, because as I think Peter said, or Jim said, I think, how many feet have we already come down, Peter, from the original?
Approximately 25.
Yeah, that's a pretty big chunk.
Yeah. No,
Not
it definitely is.
not to say it's enough, but you know, it's I think as Mr. McBain said, it's a pretty good start.
Right. No, I agree. I just, you know, just looking at it as a whole, and if there's stuff you can do to get it done, then
Yep.
we try.
Peter, what are your thoughts on what you're hearing from Jim and Amy, you know, as far as trying to keep working this?
So it makes me start to wonder if we can do what we did on the right-hand side. I know, Amy, you're not used to the units being set in the parking, but 598 North Ave has that. And when you're actually in the building, it's a cinder block wall. You don't even realize what's behind there. Okay. So it doesn't seem as strange from the front as it does from the back. It makes me wonder if we could do that to the left-hand side of the building, bring some units down in there. And now the whole building's coming onto street level, or Jim, I think Jim and I would like it if we could do it on the far right, put say 3 units down lower. So just doing what you're saying in terms of reducing the height, bringing the roof line down, but at the same time trying to react to the client's need to get the unit count at a good level so that the building can feasibly work.
Right.
You know,
I mean, the if you look down street, basically the next 2 houses have turret corners. So at least on one of them, I mean, one side of their building. So having these sort of turreted corners basically on us, I think sort of gives you some semblance of what happens, even though the other ones are much more peaked. Basically, also the fact that there's a porch on this thing that acts as a handicap access, plus a front door and canopy that really announces where the front of the building is, I think is a positive thing. As I'm not concerned about that level that you're at, Amy, I agree with where Peter is basically. Once you're in there, you don't know the parking garage is behind you. But what it does is gets rid of the blank wall, which is covered by the porch in the other case, basically. So, you know, so there's a few units there, but what it does is gives you the residential appearing there as opposed to just this big massive black brick wall that ends up, you end up trying to cover it with bushes basically, which is, you know, that's just a fake out basically. So to me, it's lower that right side. So it really does say I'm stepping down. So you got the upper building, the lower building, and then the one behind basically comes down 1 floor as well. And then you've got, I think, a little bit of character to the neighborhood. At least you're respectful more to the neighborhood than certainly the first project. Now there are buildings on the street that are 2 stories and 3 stories. I'm talking on Crescent basically, and even 4 stories on this street. So that are along Crescent Street. And, you know, some of them are older, some of them from the 50s basically as well. So there's some precedent for this to some degree, but again, it's all about the volume of this thing. The other ones are smaller buildings, but higher buildings, or not higher, but at least equally high. So I see dealing with the mass and how that mass works. I think the upper end works fine. Probably towards the street side, it needs some work. On the other side, basically on the Crescent Hill side. And we'd have to look on the right side as well towards the neighbor and how that might appear from his side. But this is looking much better than where it was, but it still needs work.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah. We don't have a color rendering yet, right?
No,
I-
not yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't do any color rendering until we get this into a massive form, basically, and then talk about what the textures and materials are. This is more reactive for us, reactive for the board. I think if they can make some modifications in the next meeting, go to the board and start to get into a discussion there and see how people feel at the board at that time about this building in the context of the rest of the neighborhood. So I wouldn't do any colored renderings at this point. I'd want to leave it more fluid so that we don't spend a lot of time, or they don't spend a lot of time working this in a more final form, because we're not at the final form. Until we get closer to the final form, I wouldn't waste my time with any sort of renderings. I mean, I'm assuming that, you know, and Peter can say basically, but I'm assuming there's some sort of brick at the bottom, you know, clapboards, and you have to look at what the roofing material is.
No, absolutely. And I think that's going to help a ton, but I agree 100%. It's too premature until we get it, the count correct, and also the heights of the building correct. And I think we can that'll be the next level of design. So, I mean, I think we hear you, and I hear you, and I think if I can work on the right side and the rear, and it obviously involves Rick Salvo, but bringing the building down and seeing my impact on not only unit count but also parking count. I think that's going to lead me to the answer, right? What I can achieve.
Yeah.
I have faith in you, Peter.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's doable. I think that, so it's just, I think we all know this, it's just one thing impacts the other, how the building functions internally, and also how it impacts the parking. So I think Rick and I had some time today to go over it briefly before this meeting, just to talk about even the impact at this go round. And we're ready to do that again. And I think that as we do the shifts now, the change again, the next phase of change, we'll just work it together until we can get those numbers where they want to be.
Can we go to the left side on the side street? Yeah, so if the building in the background, which is the third building, basically, the roof came down basically there too,
Yeah.
then you'd be
That would
like,
be huge.
yeah, it makes a difference in the rest of the neighborhood, basically. I almost want to say somehow there should be a way of sinking the parking into the ground more and come off the lower level of the garage. So this thing actually sits on the ground. I mean, that's another way to look at it. If that whole building came down and it was 3 floors, but sitting on the ground as opposed to having this huge parking lot out there, basically that would be a potential option as well. But I think
Jim,
it's more about, yeah.
Just on that point, just
Yeah.
to talk that through a little bit, just so we have some good guidelines here. So the groundwater elevation is about elevation 98.
Yeah.
We set this at 102. I think we've got a little bit more room to come down. What the real driving factor here is the lowest point is about elevation 105 here.
Yeah,
We're coming down at 10% this grade. You know, Mass DOT and ASHTO standards say that a driveway can be as steep as 15%. If we steepen this up to 15%, we could get down to 100. So this could maybe drop about 2 feet,
mhm,
but that's about it. There's, you know, that would be the max, I would say,
okay,
just to put some, there was real thought that went behind that elevation. So.
yeah, and your infiltration system would be in the groundwater system, which would be useless at the same
Right,
time.
if we lower that, at that point, it would be correct.
Yeah, well,
Was there a view from the back of the building?
yes, there is.
Yes. Let me get to it.
It's hard to make out, but there is
Okay.
one. Yeah, so see the left
Oh, yeah.
left
So the
side.
left is forward, like
Yeah.
towards the front.
So if you looked at the left side,
Mhm.
and that roof in the foreground came down one level, that's what you'd be looking at.
Yeah.
I think we have to figure
I
out,
think that would be a big difference.
we'd have to look at how the parking is handled.
Mhm.
Because right now it's parked right up to the property line. No,
Yeah,
nothing is basically shielding it from the neighbors. Even though the building might be a little lower, you still got this sort of open parking area. So
Mhm.
solving how if you can't push it down, then solving that is another different problem basically to deal with. Anyway. I don't think you want to go down half floors. You want to go down floors at the time. So you're talking 10-foot moves basically every time you do it. All right, anything else I've missed at this point? We talked about character scale, size of the building, 3 buildings as opposed to one massive one. I don't know, Peter, whether we should look at maybe sometime whether we change the color or something like that of the buildings, you know, just slightly different shade or something like that. Whether that does anything for us as
right,
well.
the different components, right and left, back and forward.
Yeah, something. I don't want to get wacky about it, but you
No,
know, at the same, because you've done so much basically with the character in the projections and like, I just don't want to blow that off.
I understand.
And Jim, I know you said, you know, when you were thinking brick, I'm kind of almost thinking stone.
I think we should look around the neighborhood.
Hmm.
All right. I mean, there aren't any, I don't think there's some brick buildings, particularly there's like a 5-story up the hill a bit. It's all brick, but
Yeah.
it is all brick. It's just, you know, it's just a
Thinking more
block.
like- Yeah, I'm thinking more, you know, so it looks almost like fieldstone, kind of has that older feel to it.
Well, you might be able to do something that up to a certain height and bring clapboards down to a certain height, basically to help play one against the other. But, you know, that's something, after we get by this massing and character, basically, then we can get more involved in how we mask basically some of these areas.
Right.
Because this back is going to need some help.
Mm-hmm.
We spent time on the front, but I think we need to spend time on the rear too.
Right.
All right, anything else? So those that are listening in, you'll get your chance to speak up at the next meeting on the 24th. There probably will not be any public meetings before then on this matter going forward. At this point, I'm going to ask, or at least say that we're closing the meeting for this group. And
Jim, just a point, I mean, is there a possibility, just so, you know, the public knows that, is there a possibility we would have another subcommittee meeting before the zoning board?
well, Well, what do we got? How many weeks? We got like 2 weeks?
True, yeah.
Well, if you were ready, to sort of pursue this a little bit more, I'm open to another meeting, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah,
And
I don't
if,
want to put strain on the team, but if they're able to get something done before that, then
I mean, because, you're telling us that, and Peter seems to acknowledge we're gonna try to do some more adjustment here. And, I think it might be beneficial to try to get it closer to something before going back to the full board. Because
yeah, because it might be kind of a waste to bring it back to the board if we don't feel comfortable with that at that point.
well, I agree, I guess, on that point, because we'll just repeat what we just said now, and yet there'll be no visual images necessarily until that night that we haven't, Amy and I haven't even seen, basically, at that point. So, yeah, if they can get it together, I'd say in a week, maybe, or something like that, next Thursday. Would that work, Peter?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, think about it this way too, from our perspective, we have to get the information to you the Friday before the meeting. So we're really ahead of it. So we're going to have a deadline coming up anyway. So I think it would be helpful. And either we are going to hit the points, hopefully we will, that we made tonight, and be closer. Because I guess, Brian, if we're not, we may even ask for an extension again.
Yeah, we
Right.
might, we might tell the, request the board to continue it again, the full board, saying we're still working with the subcommittee.
Yeah. So I think it's a good idea to have the meeting, and then we'll know if hopefully the intent being to move it forward, get it closer.
Yeah. So
Maybe we'll be close enough to go forward.
Yeah, so with that possibility, I just didn't want the public thinking that it might, it might not be another subcommittee. So if we do, you would post that, Jim, I assume. So,
Yeah, and it would be on the 18th at 7 o'clock. I assume, Amy, 7 o'clock's good for you.
Okay.
So that's an issue for me. I've got a planning board meeting in Salem that night. So I've got a conflict that night, but Peter and Rick, would you be comfortable if I were to do that?
I can, sure.
And I might be able to jump on. I think they meet early. I think their meetings start at 6 or 6:30. So I don't want to slow down the process. So, that's fine.
An issue with that.
Amy, what's your schedule?
Yeah, I can do 7 on the 18th.
On the 18th. Well, what happens, Brian, what happens if we do the 17th?
There's that,
That's St. Patrick's Day.
and there's
There'll be no drinking.
All right, we'll stick with the 18th at
Yeah,
7.
that's fine. Stay with the 18th, and I'll do my best to get on as much as I can, so I don't slow
does
it down.
7:30 work better for you, Brian?
No, 7's fine, Amy. And,
Okay.
and I don't have a lot of work on, this is more the architect and,
The team, Ryan.
yeah, more than me.
Okay. You can watch it later.
Yeah.
All right, that'd be great. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, with that, I put forward a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, I agree. So we're closing the meeting until the 18th at 7 o'clock. Check your local listings basically for this, because I've got to contact people at Town Hall to set it up, just in case something else gets in the way. And maybe by then I'll figure out how to run these buttons.